Hi, welcome to another DevNet tutorial. In this video we'll cover how to create a new main page inside the SuperOffice web client. This main page will have the same look and feel as the browser panel, but unlike the browser panel, this one will be able to host more than just web panels. This one will be able to host SuperOffice controls as well as user definable controls. What do I mean by the web panel? The browser panel is if you click on Hugo, you generally see one or more tabs that make up web panels that you can define within the SO admin client and display within the SuperOffice application. In this case, I've created already a new button called Single Pane, and if I click on it, we'll see that I come up with 3 tabs that I've created inside this page. Inside this page, yes, I've created a web panel control, but I've actually put this into my markup explicitly, as well as I've created 2 other tabs that display a label, a template for a single tab to page 2, and then if I click on single tab 3, I'll see a template for single tab to page 3. And of course, I've added on a SuperOffice control called the SO button, and if I click that SO button, I'll be able to invoke some JavaScript. In this case, I just throw up an alert message box that it was clicked. And then of course I've used a SO dub control and put that in order to display some web pages. So let's go ahead and take a look at the markup to see how this was constructed. I've created a new page called SO template single tab page.config. If we look at the SO application configuration file, you can see that I've actually declared that as a main page type, as all of the other main pages within the application. This guarantees that it's going to be placed, the definition is going to be placed within the center panel. But then again, it's up to me in order to define how that layout is structured. So here's that page again, and I'm not going to create any data handlers for this page at this time, but I do want to just point out here this panels element, which will contain all of the panel elements for a specific page. So if we compare this with, let's say, the contact page, the main page when you see the company page, let me just open that up, SO contact page. Underneath the data section, we're going to look here at the panel section, and it's very similar to what we're working with, only here it's defined in 4 panels: the menu, the button bar, the navigator panel, and then the contact panel as the main content on that page. And you see it's actually being referenced, so that tells me I have to go look for the SO contact panel .config file, which is just underneath the page definition. And here within this panel element, it defines all of the cards and views that the main page contains. Similarly, we're going to have to do something in our page that will contain content to actually see inside that view. We're going to go ahead and build that up a little bit at a time so that you can see how all of that comes together. For this panel, it's going to be of type splitter panel, and internally SuperOffice has created this in such a way that it can act both as a splitter panel, so that it contains these 3 cards, or it can act as a full page with tabs up at the top, just like the browser panel. They've done that in such a way by allowing me to define a card within the cards element and given it a placeholder ID called onePanePlaceholder, and this is absolutely required. Okay, so looking at the panel definition again, continuing on it, I have an SO protocol here called single tab, and I can issue that SO protocol in order to navigate to bring focus to my panel. Okay, the panel type is going to be of type main, and then the placeholder ID for that I'll just specify as main placeholder. Within the cards element, we'll take a look, and we're only going to use this first card in order to contain content, and this is absolutely required if we're going to have just a one pane placeholder card in place. In order to get the tab look and feel here on this card, then I'll specify this as an SO tabbed card type. Let's see, we also have main card as the card type, specify width and height as 100%, and give it the absolute highest Z index. The other 3 cards that are in this cards collection are just dummy cards, and these kind of make up just placeholders for the left panel, the right panel, and the bottom panel cards. These are absolutely required in this construction. If you did not include these, some of the layout wouldn't work. The underlining code requires that they're there. So let's go ahead and start populating our one pane placeholder card and begin actually creating some content. I'm going to go ahead and begin by just drilling into this, and we want to create, of course, a view. So for every card there contains a views element, so I'll just go ahead and specify views element, and then for every views element it contains one or more views. Okay, this view is going to be a single tabbed control as well, and it's going to be make up the whole page. So I'm going to go ahead and create a view element, and then within the view every singular element has to contain an ID. So here I'll just call it a single tab view, and we also want this type to be SO view. It's contained within an SO tabbed card, so each view automatically already knows the style of each view already knows that it has to be a tabbed view, so the tab will automatically be created for you. So we'll just go ahead and say type equals SO view. We give it an SO protocol. Every tab or every view requires an SO protocol in order to be able to become active. If I have many different views, so essentially created many different tabs within my application, in order just to be able to click on that tab, I have to assign it an SO protocol in order to have some sort of navigation point. Okay, so we'll say SO protocol. We'll equal that to, we'll just call this main since it will be the first tab, and I'll give it a height of 100%. So for every tabbed view there is a caption control or a caption element which will display the text on the tab control itself. So we'll go ahead and specify caption, and we'll just go ahead and call this single tab 1 changed. Single tab 1. Okay, and of course this view will also contain some controls, and all controls are contained within a control group, which is contained within a control groups element. Right. For this control group, I want to essentially just specify some minimal properties for it. But again, since it's a singular, it has an ID. We'll just call this tab 1 control group 1, and give it a type of SO control group. And we'll go ahead and just say left 20 pixels, and position will be absolute. And we'll go ahead and say right 20 and top 10. Okay, that should be it. Now we actually have to have at least one control on this view. So let's go ahead and just specify something simple. But before I do that, each control needs to be inside a controls element, and then we'll say control, and we'll give it a ID equal to button 1, because this will be just a button. And I'll say type equals SO button. Great. So what do we want this control to actually look and feel like? Well, it has to have a caption, so let's just go ahead and say caption, and I'll say button. What do we want this button to do? In order to control the type of functionality a button has, just like every other control, it has to have a config section or config element that defines the behavior of the control. So we'll go ahead and specify a config element, and within this config element I actually want to control the behavior of the control when I click on it, and within a button control that's all handled in the onClick element. So here we can go ahead and just specify some JavaScript directly. We'll just say alert, close that off, and we'll just say like hello DevNet. I'll save that. Now let's go ahead and open that and see what that looks like in the website. Whoops, before we do, let's go ahead and just make sure I name that type correctly. So I'll call that SO control group, not just control group. Every type has the SO prefix, or at least every intrinsic type. Everything else there looks okay. So then I'll just skip over to the website and we'll see if we can click on single tab. And in fact we do get our single tab main page. And if I click on the button, we'll see hello DevNet as we expect. Great. Now let's go ahead and add in a couple more views to this page and just kind of see the extensibility there and how that works. So next I'll navigate back to our Markup, and I'll come underneath the existing control group, and actually no, I want to go underneath the existing view and go ahead and define two more views. So we'll call this view. We'll give this view an ID called single tab view 2. Single tab view 2. Great. Oops. Be nice if we had an ID attribute there. Right. Okay. Next we'll go ahead and specify the type equals SO view. Okay. And we'll also have to give this an SO protocol. And we'll say SO protocol for this guy will be single tab view 2. How about that? Single sure, that should be fine. And then let's go ahead and we'll drop down in here and start defining some things for this view. Let's see, we'll say caption, and we'll call this single tab 2. Alright. Now, as far as controls are concerned, all I want to do is just show a simple label, right? Just to get the label on the form. So this will be inside a control groups element, control group. Right. We'll specify this as an ID equal to, let's see, single tab 2 control group 2, and also we'll specify this type, make sure we get it correctly this time, SO control group. Right. And just a little bit of positioning on here as well. We'll say left equals 20 pixels, and we can also say right equals 20 pixels, and we'll say position equals absolute. Right. And maybe from the top we'll also say top equals, say, 10 pixels. Great. Now then here we'll go ahead and define a controls element. That will contain all of our controls within this control group. I'll specify one control. I'll give it an ID equal to SO button tab 2, and we'll give it a type equal to SO button. Right. And the button needs a caption. Oh, we wanted to do label, didn't we? That's okay, caption can stay there. So label. And the caption will then be, let's see, template for a single tabbed page. We're on tab 2. Okay. Just give that a quick looks over. Looks like everything is defined correctly. And then we can go back to the website, save the file, make sure that's saved, come back to the website, and we'll just refresh that page by clicking on another icon and then coming back, and in fact we see the second page is there now. That's great. One thing I want you guys to know is if you click on this tab and it doesn't get selected, the reason might be because you haven't assigned it an SO protocol. For example, if I come here and I take that SO protocol away from the tab 2 and I come back to the page, let me go ahead and just kind of refresh that. I click on the tab now. If I try and click on it, you see I'm trying to click on it and it's not getting selected, and that's because it does not have an SO protocol defined for it. This should kind of be a clue that SO protocol is very important when it comes to the navigation within the application. It is, the primary factor to consider when defining how to navigate inside the 6 web or the web client application. Now I've changed it back and I can go ahead and click on that. Now let's go back to the markup and we'll see how to put in that the SO control here in order to get that web panel layout if that is what you want. So we'll come back here and then I'll come underneath on the first tab, and then we have control groups here, and I'm going to go ahead and put the SO control in its own control group, just so that you see within views you can have multiple control groups, and you can use these control groups in order to specify layout specific settings. So we'll go ahead, we'll add one more control group. Alright, we'll give this guy an ID equal to, let's say, single tab header group. And we'll specify the type equal to SO control group, and we'll also specify some layout settings as well. So we'll say, let's say left equals 20 pixels, and then we'll say right equals 20 pixels, and then we'll say from the top we want 40 pixels, and then from the bottom we'll say 20 pixels. Right. Now within that control group we want to place a SO control, and that of course will go inside a controls element. We'll put a control element in there, and now we'll specify this, say ID equal to tabbed we'll specify the type equal to SO control, and that's about it. Now let's go within the control element itself. Right, something's wrong there. Oh yes, missing that. Good. Now, again, very similar to the button, the way that you define behavior for SuperOffice controls is going to be within this config element. Now, within the config element for a SOWWW control, in order to specify web panels, those are all contained within a URLs tag. So we'll go ahead and specify URLs. And then here is an element essentially that you can call anything. I'm going to go ahead and just call it an item, but it is the attributes that's most important. So we'll say caption equals, let's say, definite, and then we'll say, I don't know, tooltip, for example, equals DevNet rocks. How about that? And then we specify the actual content of the URL or the item, and that would be, of course, the website of the DevNet page. Okay. We can go ahead and just copy and paste that, put in one more, say SuperOffice itself. Alright, and then we'll just address the .com site. Okay, so I'll go ahead and save that, and then we can go back to the main page and see how that turned out. So we'll go ahead and just click on company, come back to single page. So it looks like the layoff here is a little bit off because we can no longer see the button. So let's go ahead back to our SuperOffice markup language file, the config file, and try and figure out why. So obviously it's usually a positioning issue, so I'll go in here and I'll look at some of the positions. Left, right, top, position absolute. Here we go. Left, right, top, bottom. Okay, we're missing a position element, or a position attribute, sorry. So we'll say absolute. We'll save that. We'll come back to the page. We'll click on company. Click on single page. And there we go. There's the button, just like we would expect. So there you have it. That is how to create a main page within the web client application. I hope that you're able to take this a little bit further, and remember, you can go ahead and add in your own custom controls in here. You don't have to you don't have to use the SuperOffice controls. You have as many views as you like. Happy programming. Thanks for watching.